Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest on the line right now, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. Welcome.
Peace. Good morning. Great to be with y'all.
Not just any congressman. The next Speaker of the House, who's replacing Nancy Pelosi. Can we go ahead and put that out there, Hakeem?
Man, listen, I'm just trying to do my current job, and in the Trump era, we just try to get to tomorrow and then get to the day after that, and then make sure that this dude is out of office on January 20th. And then the future will take care of itself. But we got a great speaker right now, and one speaker at a time. And I've got a job to do, as chair of the House Democratic Caucus. Proud to serve in that position. It's the most diverse legislative caucus now in the history of the country. More women serving in Congress than ever before, more African Americans, more Latinos, more Asian Americans, more members of the LGBTQ community, 2 Muslim American women, 2 Native American women for the first time in history. So we're just looking forward to getting to work, doing the business of the people, and working with the Biden administration, President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, to make life better for our people and for everyday Americans.
And I'm proud to say that Congressman Hakeem Jeffries is my congressman. So it's good to have you on here always.
It's great to see you, Angela. And I work for you. And so, it's an honor.
It's been crazy.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about one of the big things in the neighborhood right now is there's rats everywhere. And that's been really awful. And I guess, I know it's something that's been hard to control just nationally, but over here, I've never seen anything like this before.
You in Bed-Stuy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. No, we'll make sure we get on that. I'll talk to the mayor's office and the Department of Health. We've seen a lot of, with the increase in construction activity that has been occurring, which of course is connected to the gentrification that we have to deal with, and the affordable housing dynamics that are running through traditionally, African American communities throughout central Brooklyn and beyond, but we'll certainly get on that.
Yeah, they said that because of COVID, there's not a lot of restaurants opened up, so a lot of the scraps and the garbage that the rats and mice would usually eat, they don't have that anymore. So now they're coming out more and more looking for food, so you're starting to see more and more rats and mice all over New York City.
Yeah, no, it's been an aggressive situation, and we got to work. Yeah. A lot of challenges connected to COVID. This is another quality of life one that has to be dealt with.
Yeah, they said they popping up with Timberlands and stuff like that, ready to fight for some food. So just be careful out there in Brooklyn.
I scared it all. They like, what's up, yo? You going to the car? I'm like, come on.
Congressman, I wanted you on this morning for a few reasons, man. We talk a lot about candidates having a black agenda, which they should have. But what should our agenda as black people be right now that the election is over? What should we be focused on?
It's a great question, and we have a real good opportunity, given the role that the black community played in elevating Joe Biden as the nominee and then carrying him over the finish line. Of course, the great House Majority Whip, Jim Clyburn, played, an incredibly consequential role in advance of South Carolina. That then catapulted Joe Biden into Super Tuesday and beyond. And then we saw incredible turnout throughout the key battleground states as it relates to the African American community. And so we've always said that Election Day is not the end, it's the beginning. Mm-hmm. And what follows from Election Day, and Charlamagne, you've talked a lot about this, is accountability connected to improving the condition of African Americans and all Americans, but focused on African Americans for purpose of this exchange, is dealing with, first, the systemic racism that has been in the soil of America for 401 years. And we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go. But in the aftermath of the assassination of George Floyd in Minneapolis, there's been an awakening across the country, opening up an opportunity to finally try to deal with some of these issues of racial, social, and economic injustice, combined with the pandemic, where the African American community has experienced a disproportionately adverse amount of the pain and the suffering and the death, because we were disproportionately poorly positioned in advance of COVID-19, and we're overrepresented among essential workers. So while others are being asked to stay home and socially distance themselves, people from our community are going out, working on these frontline jobs, then coming back home to their neighborhoods, their communities, their families, posing increased risk of infection. I say all that to say, we face a complex series of challenges connected to the once in a century COVID-19 pandemic. Mm-hmm. And you layer on top of that the systemic racism issues that we continue to grapple with. What we should expect the Biden administration to do is to enact a transformational agenda that brings about sustainable change. Mm-hmm. And so I think that has to be the top line approach. And then we can get into the issues, which of course need to involve police reform, mm-hmm. criminal justice reform, but also I think we need to really deal with economic empowerment issues anchored in the history of having been excluded from a variety of different things that were designed to create a level playing field. Going all the way back initially to the Reconstruction era, which involved both prohibiting slavery pursuant to the 13th Amendment, equal protection under the law pursuant to the 14th Amendment, and then guaranteeing the right to vote, at least theoretically, regardless of race, connected to the 15th Amendment. But the other part of Reconstruction was the economic empowerment of the newly freed slaves, mm-hmm. the creation of what was called the Freedmen's Bank, the effort to try to provide access to land and opportunity. We were promised 40 acres and a mule. In many of our communities, we were flooded with 40 ounces and a blunt. So Reconstruction was short-circuited. And then you got two other examples. During the Great Depression, Jim Clyburn talks about this a lot. Part of FDR's plan to revive America and take us out of the Great Depression was the New Deal. African Americans were systematically excluded from the New Deal participation because the boys from the Jim Crow South, who were Dixiecrats, Democrats, wouldn't pass New Deal legislation unless there was exclusion of African Americans. And then finally, when we came back after World War II, and we know African Americans participated like all Americans, the greatest generation collectively, and then came back and America built the biggest middle class in the history of the world. Part of that success was connected to the GI Bill and the opportunities that were created educationally and in terms of employment from the GI Bill. African Americans were excluded from the GI Bill. And so our opportunity to begin to participate in the American economy didn't really start until the aftermath of the 1960s, which people call the Second Reconstruction. So unless we pursue change with intentionality anchored in this history, we're going to miss the moment. And I think we're committed to doing that and doing it in the boldest possible fashion.
I'm glad you keep saying that because Reverend Barber I'm glad you keep saying Reconstruction because Reverend Barber says he believes we're in the third Reconstruction era now.
No, I think that's right. And every time there was progress in America, we've talked about this in the past, there's always backlash. Progress from Reconstruction, backlash with the rise of Jim Crow. Progress from the Civil Rights Movement, backlash in terms of the election of Richard Nixon, the rise of mass incarceration on his watch in 1971, where he declared drug abuse public enemy number one. At the time, there were less than 350,000 people incarcerated in America. Today, 2.2 million, disproportionately Black and Latino, significant number of them nonviolent drug offenders. You look back at the notes of the Nixon administration when the war on drugs was started, and there's indication and evidence it was targeted at us for a reason, part of the backlash to the second Reconstruction of the Civil Rights Movement. Obama gets elected, and of course the backlash immediately arises, followed by the election of Trump. And so now we're fighting our way into a third moment of sustainable progress, as Reverend Barber says, the third Reconstruction. And the question is, are we going to bring it to life in a meaningful way?
Also, Charlamagne always talks about voter suppression, and we've been seeing it this whole election. I seen you tweet something yesterday about voter suppression. What was that tweet about?
Yeah, what we've seen is the 1965 Voting Rights Act was designed to bring to life what the original 15th Amendment was supposed to have done, which is to allow African Americans the opportunity to vote.
Right.
But in the Jim Crow South and beyond, they undertook every possible effort to stop African Americans from participating. 65 Voting Rights Act gets passed, and that's thanks to John Lewis, the great John Lewis, and many other civil rights foot soldiers, men and women alike. And that opened up a new era of opportunity for African Americans to participate in the election process. And it went pretty smoothly for a while. In fact, the 4 times that the Voting Rights Act was reauthorized, it was signed into law by a Republican president. 1970, Richard Nixon; 1975, Gerald Ford; 1982, Ronald Reagan; 2006, George Bush. So wait, voting rights for a while was a non-controversial bipartisan issue. What happened? Barack Obama gets elected in 2008. And now all of a sudden everything changes. And we see a Tea Party wave in 2010. They start introducing, I think it was 180 voter suppression type bills in 41 states, 2 years after Barack Obama was elected.
Wow.
And then the Supreme Court in 2013, 5-4 decision, strikes down part of the Voting Rights Act. And that opened up the door to all of this voter suppression that we're seeing. And it's continued relentlessly. And so what I was making reference to, and this is why it's going to be important to try to not just, we got the House, we got Joe Biden on his way to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. We all need to get on the midnight train to Georgia, either personally or virtually, to try to get the Senate so we can get in alignment, a triangular alignment of values between the House, the Senate, and the presidency to get things passed like the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Act, which would repair the damage that the Supreme Court did in 2013 and end this era of voter suppression once and for all.
Congressman Jeffries, I want to go back to what we were talking about earlier with the Black agenda. What are the conversations like now when Joe Biden goes into office? Do you feel hopeful that a lot of initiatives that are being discussed will actually pass? Is he making any type of commitments already behind the scenes?
Well, one of the earliest conversations that I had with then Vice President Biden was about the need for transformational criminal justice reform. We got it started, in the House, working with Cedric Richmond and Karen Bass, myself, along with, Republican conservative members like Doug Collins and others around the First Step Act. That started in the House. Trump takes a lot of credit for it, but it started in the House and we got it over to the Senate and eventually got it to the president's desk and he signed it into law. We called it a first step because it was a down payment on justice. Our view was if we had 50 years of mass incarceration, you can't wave a single legislative magic wand and make it all disappear, but you got to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then proceed with sustained intensity, sustained effort, sustained engagement to wipe it away. And so now Joe Biden has the opportunity to do what's necessary to reverse engineer the damage of not just the 1994 crime bill,
the 88 crime bill, 86 mandatory minimum sentencing,
86 mandatory minimum. So we got to look at the trifecta that was done to our communities. Of course, the mandatory minimums we got to wipe away. The crack cocaine situation was in part, and Obama doesn't get a lot of credit for this, they addressed this in legislation led by the Obama administration.
Was that the Fair Sentencing?
In 2010. With the Fair Sentencing Act, yeah,
okay.
You got it. And so with the Fair Sentencing Act, they reduced the crack cocaine disparity from 100 to 1 to 18 to 1. Now, they weren't able to bring it all the way down to 1 to 1, but that was a significant reduction. There's no justification for treating powder cocaine offenses differently than crack cocaine offenses. There's no pharmacological difference. I've always wanted to use that word. I can't spell it, but I know what it means. There's no pharmacological difference. There's no chemical difference. There's no physical difference between how the body processes crack cocaine and powder cocaine. The difference was crack cocaine was used in the inner city, the communities, in the hood. And powder cocaine was used in affluent neighborhoods and in the suburbs. So to his credit, the Obama administration dropped that sentencing disparity down dramatically. And then in the First Step Act, we made it retroactive, which is why thousands of people, mostly Black men, have been released pursuant to the First Step Act. And so our view now is that let's build upon what was previously done and reverse engineer all of the damage with transformational criminal justice reform. That's going to be on the agenda. Of course, the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Act, like we just discussed, MV, that's on the agenda. Police reform on the agenda. And then we have to take a deep look at the economy within communities of color to make sure that we can bring about prosperity in every single zip code, regardless of race. And that's going to involve access to housing and home ownership opportunities. That's going to involve access to entrepreneurial opportunities, and appreciate the entrepreneurial spirit that all of you, bring to our community and our efforts in a wide variety of ways. But it's going to take intentionality in terms of creating entrepreneurial opportunities. And it's going to mean that we have to get access to the jobs of the 21st century economy in the tech space and in the innovation economy. And I think you're going to see the Congressional Black Caucus proceed with focus and precision, working with, Cedric Richmond. Shout out to Cedric Richmond, heading over to the White House as the highest ranking Black official in the West Wing. And we're looking forward to that close working relationship to get some of these things done.
Congressman, you said something that I'm glad you said. Trump does take a lot of credit for the First Step Act, but that was actually your bill, and you did something that Ice Cube got in trouble for, and that's you worked with Trump to get the First Step Act passed. Why were you okay working with Trump?
Yeah, it was an interesting decision, and it was one that, I made working alongside Cedric and Karen and others, but we concluded that the urgency of dealing with criminal justice reform was so significant that if we could get something done that was meaningful for currently incarcerated individuals and those who are formerly incarcerated but need a pathway into successfully transitioning into our society, that will deal with the politics of it in 2020, but that if he was serious and genuine about getting something done, we were going to work with him, because otherwise we would essentially been saying, well, we're going to play politics with the lives of those who have been impacted
Absolutely.
by mass incarceration. Why would we do that? That's our folks.
Word.
And then we said, and whatever the consequences are, and we knew Charlamagne that he was going to take full credit because that's what he does, but we'd fight that battle when it was election time, but find the space to govern because it was such an urgent need for our people. And then I think my other view was, if you can make this a bipartisan issue, then it doesn't matter who the president is. It doesn't matter who controls the House or the Senate. If the Republicans were down with working with us on this, as they are on criminal justice for a variety of reasons, we had to seize the moment. And that's what we did. And I think, it was the right decision.
I respect it. I think that, it served a greater need for the people. Like, y'all weren't worried about perception. Y'all weren't worried about politics. Y'all were worried about the people. I think that says a lot about y'all.
Yeah, it was interesting because it was definitely some internal battles, as it relates to whether we should do it or not. But my view with these things is always the standard is meaningfulness. Mm-hmm. We shouldn't rock with the other side just to give them an applause line at a rally or a press release to puff himself up. That makes no sense, particularly when they spent 8 years obstructing Barack Obama. But if we can cross the threshold of meaningfulness in terms of getting something done for the community, then you work to get it done and you fight the political battle later.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult has it been to get things done these past 4 years?
Well, it's been a schizophrenic situation because, the president's got a master's in manipulation and a PhD in deception. And the thing with him is that he's constantly fanning the flames of racial hatred. And so at the same time that we were trying to find a pathway to work together on issues, we also had to speak truth to power and try to hold him accountable for the things that he was saying and doing. And, that's been an interesting dynamic that we found ourselves in over the last 4 years, which is why, to me, it always comes back to meaningfulness.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And if we can do something meaningful in this lane, do it to make life better. Don't just put it off in the hope that we were going to get a Democratic president, because you never know whether it's going to happen or not.
So personally, like for you being at the impeachment proceedings, I'm sure that on a personal level, anything that you try to bring forth, you're probably like, eh.
Yeah, that was certainly interesting. That was another reason why, it was important to get it done in 2018, because post-impeachment, he shut down. Right? He's like, I'm not rocking with y'all at all, meaning all of us from Speaker Pelosi on down. He basically shut down. That's been part of the challenge with COVID-19. Initially, we were able to work together to get some things done, but at a certain point, he said, I'm done. Wait, the deaths are increasing, the pain's increasing, the suffering's increasing, the unemployment is increasing. Why did we shut it down in March and April? And now we got more than 250,000 Americans dead. So we're still trying to get something over the finish line right now, but Trump is in the witness protection program. Mm-hmm. Nobody can find him.
He's not talking to anybody, huh?
Yeah.
Now, Sean King recently tweeted, I live in Hakeem Jeffries' district in Brooklyn. I know at least 5 people that I think could challenge and defeat him. He's severely out of touch with his own constituents. He's also as weirdly obsessed with AOC as most Republicans. Disturbing. What does Congressman Hakeem Jeffries say to that?
Who?
Sean King.
Jeffries district, and I tell you, he gets a lot of support here. I've been to events and fundraisers and everything.
I mean,
what happened with you and Sean King, man? What's going on?
I just said it. I just read what Sean King said. Crazies.
I'm thinking it might have came from somewhere else. I'm asking him.
I'm going to tell y'all, I can't figure out why Jeffrey, that's his real name, I can't figure out why Jeffrey's trying to get at us. It's the strangest thing. But, I mean,
it got to come from somewhere, though, right? Because, I mean, he just started coming at you. He was like, all of your fundraising comes from super rich donors and PACs. Like,
I mean, I think Angela can attest to the fact that she was a special guest at an event that was community focused. So it's confusing. It's confusing to me. And, he plays for Team Gentrification. I play for Team Brooklyn. And so my view is, at the end of the day, come on in, the water is warm. This is a democracy. If we got to work it out, I'm easy to find, right? I'm home every weekend. I'm in the streets trying to serve the people, and the people can decide what direction we should go in June. But I will say that, Jeffrey's got to be careful, though. He's got to be a little careful.
Well,
Congressman. Hold on, wait. Don't be the what?
Don't be the next contestant on that Summer Jam screen. I'll leave it at that. Half a bar.
I think he wants to run against you. I've been hearing him hint at that a little bit as well.
Yeah, no, I think he should. I mean, I really do think he should. I mean, this is a democracy. And look, Charlamagne, you know, I've said it's an honor to serve the people, but we're all on a 2-year contract.
Mm-hmm.
And every 2 years, we go back to the people to ask that employment contract be renewed. That's the special thing about the House. We don't have a 4-year term like the presidency. We don't have a 6-year term like the Senate. We don't have life tenure like the Supreme Court. The reason is the House was designed to be the institution closest to the people, to reflect the hopes, the dreams, the aspirations, the fears, the concerns, the anxieties, in the words of the framers, the passions of the people. That's what I try to do, you know, to the best of my ability as my authentic self, you know, having grown up in Central Brooklyn, honored to now serve those communities and beyond. But I recognize that the seat doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the people. And every 2 years, I've got to do the work, speak truth to power, work to get things done, and then make my case for another 2-year term in terms of the renewal of my employment contract.
I think there's also this that you have an issue with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez too. And I was surprised by that because I have respect, and I've said this repeatedly, for every single member of the House Democratic Caucus. That's my job, right? From the most progressive member to the most moderate member at all points in between. That's what makes us who we are. You know, we're a big family, we're a diverse family, we can be an enthusiastic, rambunctious family, but that's why the House Democrats are the most authentic representatives for the American people. And so I was strange why he suggested that. It seemed like it was a little bit of projection in terms of who he may be obsessed with, because he's always trying to get at us.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies and gentlemen, Congressman got to go. You got to go hard out at 9:50.
Oh, okay. Listen, I got 2 more questions. Centrist Democrats, establishment Democrats, and progressives. Why don't y'all just sit down and have a conversation? Because I feel like the future of the Democratic Party will largely depend on the young progressives, because the things they are demanding are the things that will absolutely improve the country right now. So why can't y'all just sit down and have a conversation?
Yeah, no, I think, and that's ongoing. And, you know, we're going to have to continue to have these kind of family conversations, because the Big Ten is what makes us who we are. We're not them. The other side is like, you know, homogeneous. It's just the same cookie cutter situation. We reflect the great, gorgeous mosaic of the American people, whether that's on race or gender or sexual orientation or religion or ideology or life experience or region. That's what makes us special and who we are. So we do have to work through these challenges. But I've said that the pathway to our success beyond unity is to do 2 things. Keep the progressive base energized by driving transformational change, but at the same time, move swing voters in our direction. Those are moderate voters. Those are independent voters. Sometimes those are even Republican voters. And for us to have success in enacting an agenda, we have to govern. And in order to govern, we have to win. Mm-hmm. And in order to win, we've got to do those 2 things. Energize the progressive base by dealing with these big transformational issues, Charlamagne, that you're referencing, while at the same time moving swing voters in our direction by focusing on kitchen table, pocketbook issues that make life better for working families, for middle-class folks, for seniors, for young people, veterans, the poor, the sick, the afflicted, the least, the lost, and the left behind. That's what brings Democrats together. And if we keep our eye on that prize, as John Lewis would often say to us, and Elijah Cummings, our North Star, then I think we're going to come together and we're going to have great success working with President Biden.
One last question, because I want you to be able to talk about this directly. You know, Sean also said, he did say your fundraising comes from super rich donors and PACs. Is that true? And if so, can you still be of the people if that's where the majority of your fundraising is coming from?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's inaccurate. And I'm not even sure the majority of the fundraising that I've been able to do has been on the individual side, not on the corporate political action committee side. That's just facts. So for whatever the reason, I don't know if it's obsession. And again, if you're in the district, just run, bro. Run. What's the problem? And then we can take the case to the people. But let's put accurate facts into the public domain. And yeah, I do raise a lot of money from people within the legal profession. I was the first person in my immediate family to go to law school. And then I worked, at a reasonably high-powered litigation firm where I was trained in the art and science of the law. I developed a lot of relationships there, including with some of the top Black lawyers in the country like Ted Wells. Mm-hmm. But then I made the decision that I want to take that training and I want to give back to the communities that gave so much to me. And that's why I ran, first for the Assembly, served there for 6 years, and then in Congress. So, it's interesting that what I think many of us would view as, a pathway to pursue the American dream, but then make the decision that, I'm gonna walk away from the law because there's too many issues in our community that we need to deal with. And I wanna be a part of the solution. Mm-hmm. But those are relationships that I've developed over time that I'm proud of. They don't ask anything of me other than be the best possible servant for the people. And that's what I've endeavored to do. So, again, we can evaluate the track record, the issues that I work on, and, am I trying to serve the people with the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act? I think I am. Am I trying to serve the people with the First Step Act? I think I am. Am I trying to serve the people by holding Trump accountable? As an impeachment manager, I think I am. But ultimately, Angela and others who I represent have the privilege of will make that decision in terms of what's right down the road. Absolutely.
Yeah, Mayor Pete told me that one time. Mayor Pete was like, yeah, you can take money from them as long as you continue to serve the people. Don't make them no promises. And I don't see the problem with it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Congressman Jeffries. Always a pleasure. We look forward to
the next Speaker of the House, Hakeem Jeffries.
We appreciate y'all.
All righty, brother. Have a good one.
Peace, King.
Take care, y'all.